extra time.
সফল ভবিষ্যৎ গড়ার একটাই কাহিনী, ছায়া প্রকাশনী।
ছায়া প্রকাশনী।
Hello and welcome to the Extra Time Football Show. This is your very own Suman Chakravarti, and today we have the lord of all commentators, my favorite, my mentor, and more importantly for all the budding commentators who want to become a commentator, he is the idol for all of them, Mr. John Helm. John, welcome to the Extra Time Football Show.
My pleasure, thank you. At least you didn't introduce me as a veteran again. I'm usually introduced as veteran.
No, I do believe that you get younger on your every birthday.
I try, yes, I knock a year off, that's the secret. I'm hoping I get back to 27 one day.
You are, in fact. John, more importantly, today's show is basically for all the commentators, all the budding commentators who want to become commentators, who dream about being a commentator. So what would be your 5 tips, to be precise, the basic tips which they should follow?
Well, I think first of all, be yourself. You know, we're all different personalities, and I think if you can get your personality across as a commentator, whether you're in vision or out of vision, I think that's such an important ingredient. The next thing is that you have to inform. It's important that we're accurate in our description of everything that we see. For the viewer's benefit as well, we have to inform. Thirdly, I would say we have to entertain, because we are so blessed. We're in the entertainment industry. We're not sitting at a desk. We're not working in a factory or at a shop. We are watching sport. What a wonderful auditorium that is. What a wonderful piece of theatre. And so we have the responsibility, I think, to entertain the viewer. So those are the first 3 ingredients, I would say, that make a good commentator. The fourth thing, I would say, is your voice. And I've heard some commentators who don't always enunciate properly. They let their voice drift away. So it might even be on a scoreline where they say, and so here we are, it's Montbegan 1, East Bengal 0. What was the score there? So you have to constantly project as a commentator. Otherwise, you're probably wasting everybody's time, really. That's the whole point of having a commentator anyway. And if I've got to choose a 5th thing, I think I would say that we are blessed, and therefore you have to give the impression of enjoyment, of the fact that we are in a unique situation, we're doing something we love, and get that enthusiasm across. So, you know, there we have my 5 tips anyway. Enthusiasm is absolutely essential, but we are blessed. We're in a wonderful industry, and we're lucky to be doing it.
John, many commentators have a similar problem. If a dull game is going on for the whole 90 minutes, so what would be your tips to entertain the fans, to entertain the viewers who are watching that particular game?
Try not to sleep, for a start. don't nod off, don't snooze. We've all had it. We've had some terrible games to commentate on over the years. I think, to be honest, I mean that quite sincerely, you have to be honest to the viewer. If a game is poor, say it's poor. Don't try and fool the public, because they can't be fooled. They can see that it's not the most entertaining of games. Suddenly a match can burst into life. I've had a couple of games here which have been dull for half an hour, and I actually said that during one of them. I said, well, we've seen better games than this one. And then all of a sudden it exploded into life. And so therefore we have what we call in the industry light and shade. So keep it calm while the game is poor. Try not to, as I say, nod off or let the viewer be dozing off. So you have to try and give valuable information during that time, things that are relevant to the game. And then when something really good does happen in the game, you explode into life. And I think that's why we call it light and shade.
As a commentator, we all know, you told me during a few workshops which I attended, to be precise, over there in the past as well, that storytelling really do play a very important role in a football game when it's boring. So could you please throw some light onto it?
Well, telling a story is something that happens, it evolves over the 90 minutes. So you have to be aware constantly of what the storyline is. And yesterday, for example, I did the game involving New Caledonia and Japan. Now, everybody believed that the story was going to be how many goals Japan are going to score here. It's going to be an avalanche. They scored after 7 minutes. They might have scored another goal in the early phases as well. It was just a question of time, you felt. And then as the game evolved, the story changed. New Caledonia were not just hanging on. Japan were running out of ideas. And then as it got further and further into the second half, New Caledonia suddenly had a couple of chances. Then they got the equaliser. that was history in the making. And so the story, the line, constantly changed throughout the course of the 90 minutes. That's what I mean by telling the story of the game.
As a commentator, how much impact the studies before the game help to a commentator?
Oh, totally essential. I despair sometimes because I'll see the work of other commentators who haven't really done enough preparation. I spend at least 6 hours, you might think it's boring, in that bedroom and there, looking for every little statistic that I think might be of use. And I don't mean boring statistics. If somebody has scored a goal against the same opposition before, that's interesting. If it's his birthday, that is interesting. There are all sorts of interesting facts about every single player. The difficulty sometimes is eking that information out of the player or the coach. Training sessions these days, you tend not to get much value out of going to a training session. Press conference is a little bit better maybe. Study. You have to read magazines, you have to read the newspapers. I read 2 or 3 newspapers every day and jot down what is going to be interesting. And then in that 6 hours in that bedroom, I feel as though I'm on top of the game. So that when something happens, I probably don't even refer to the notes because it's logged in my brain. Some people say, why do you write everything down, which I do in red ink for one team and black ink for the other? It's because once it's written down, it's in the brain. It's there for the 90 minutes when it's so important. You only use maybe a fraction of the information you have on every game. And I never throw notes away. I save them all. I can tell you now, I've got notes on about 4,000 matches, but you never know when it's going to come in handy.
You started your career as a newspaper journalist. So could you please tell us the journey about it? Then you worked for BBC, we all know that. But please tell me about that particular journey.
Well, I began on August the 17th, 1959 on a newspaper way before you were born, or anybody probably, a newspaper called the Shipley Times and Express. And I was extremely fortunate because there was a journalist who lived on the same street as I did. My father had a word with him, told him I was dead keen to get into journalism, which wasn't the sort of occupation people went into in 1959. You know, you went into the bank or the building society or insurance. So people were a bit astonished when I said, no, I want to be a journalist. And I spent 7 years on that weekly paper, and I don't begrudge a second of it. I used to cover the local council meetings, I used to do court appearances, I used to cover local football. That's where I first developed my interest, I think. And then after 7 years, I moved on to a newspaper called the Yorkshire Post. Some people may have heard of that, a famous daily paper. Had 4 years working there, again doing some sports, but I was a general news reporter. And then in 1970 I was invited to join the BBC, and I couldn't believe that the British Broadcasting Corporation were actually asking John Helm if he wanted to work for them. Of course I did. You know, I'd grown up listening to the BBC, watching the BBC. I thought it was a wonderful organisation. And I became sports editor of Radio Leeds in Yorkshire, a post I held for 5 years. And then after that I went down into London. You've got to go to the smoke at some stage. And I presented the main Saturday afternoon show and produced it as well. And since then, well, I suppose it's gone pretty well. And I've had many, many years working for different news organisations, basically commentating on sport around the world. Hey, not bad, eh?
People like me who had the opportunity or the fortune to came across you for sometimes, to be precise, in the past, know that you are an encyclopedia. So could you please tell me about your first game experience, as a commentator?
Yeah, my first game experience as a commentator on television was in 1981, and the game was Rotherham United versus Norwich City. And Norwich scored after 4 minutes. A guy called Greg Shepherd scored the goal. And bear in mind, I'm nervous because it's my first television show, but I'm happy to have described the goal. But I see that Rotherham, out of the corner of my eye, have got a corner. And so I put what is called the lazy talkback key down on the commentary box and said to the director, Rotherham have got a corner, Jeff. And he said, your job's to keep talking over the replay. And I kept talking over the replay and was still talking when Rotherham equalised. And he'd not got a shot of it. And believe you or me, after 4 minutes, I think I knew more about television than he did, because he'd not done the right thing. You know, he should have had a camera slaved on it. But every time since then, I'm talking 1981, 36 years on, everybody in Rotherham still reminds me that I missed a goal on my first ever match, which was not right. But you don't forget things like that, and you learn from it.
Well, another small thing which I forgot to ask you. Normally what happens, like this particular U17 World Cup which is going on right at the moment, is perhaps the right example of it, that you might not know all the players because they are not that much familiar. We do a lot of commentaries in different tournaments where we might not spot the players because they are not that much familiar. As a commentator, what would be a note of advice for them?
Well, try and pick out 2 or 3 individuals when you're starting out. When you look down onto the pitch, maybe 40 minutes before kick-off and the teams come and warm up, try and pick out somebody with blonde hair, somebody with strange haircuts, which a lot of footballers have nowadays, somebody with pink boots or green boots, so that you've probably got 4 or 5 individuals to start with. Okay, some players look the same, some players don't run the same as other people do. Even that is different. People do run differently, you know. A left winger runs in a different way to a right fullback. And it's funny how you can tell what position somebody's going to play in simply by watching the way they run. So pick out things like that and decide that you've got those names in your head. It's not always easy, especially with all due respect to the Korean team, for example, whose names are very similar and very difficult. But if it's a team, shall we say, Chile, and you know they have 4 or 5 players who you can pronounce, well, you check on your pronunciations as well. Every time you must check on all pronunciations. New Caledonia, good example. French names, so you have to get the pronunciation right, but a few exotic haircuts. So you pick out 5 or 6 that you're going to immediately recognise, and then you work around the rest. And by the end of the game, hopefully even after 45 minutes, you can identify immediately every player on the pitch.
People know you as one of the best football commentators in the history of world football. But as I know that you know cricket as well, and you're a big fan of cricket. So could you please say something about your knowledge regarding cricket and Indian cricket, to be precise?
Oh, absolutely, because I grew up in a cricketing street. Now that might sound crazy. Older people may know the names. They'll know one name in particular. But in the street where I lived, the coach of Yorkshire at the time was called Arthur Mitchell. He'd played for England and he lived about 4 doors away on the opposite side of the street. 3 doors away on the same side of the street lived the captain of Yorkshire, Ronnie Burnett. 2 doors away on my left-hand side lived Phil Sharp Santee. Phil Sharp played for Yorkshire and England. And I began my journalistic career needing to do shorthand, and who taught me shorthand but Jim Laker's auntie. Now, Jim Laker was a great off-spin bowler, once took 19 wickets for 90 against Australia at Old Trafford. He went to the same school as I did, Salt Grammar School in Shipley, so I grew up as an off-spinner trying to emulate Jim Laker. And I first remember India coming to play in England with Vinu Mankad, Polly Umrigar, Pankaj Roy, then R.B. Desai, Surendranath, I could probably go on and on and on. Manjrekar, B.J. Manjrekar, of course, that one. V.S. Hazare, who was the captain of the side. Abid Ali. I loved it, and I loved watching the Indians play. A.G. Kripal Singh, Tamhane, the wicket-keeper, Mudaya. I saw them all play. And cricket is still, in a way, my number one love. I'm the president of a Bradford League club at Baildon. We've had Indian players, funnily enough, in the past. And so I still go to watch cricket just about every day in the summer when I can do.
How's your friendship going with Mr. Farooq Engineer?
Mr. Who?
Mr. Farooq Engineer.
Oh, Farooq Engineer. Yes, I saw Farooq in the airport in Mumbai last year. And I used to play in golf tournaments with Farooq. And of course, he played in Lancashire, in the Lancashire League, as well as for Lancashire. And he's a great man, great character. Sadly, we both lost a big friend in Brian Close a couple of years ago, the former England captain who lived in the same village as me. I was big friends with Brian. But there are great stories going back about Garfield Sobers from the West Indies, Towie Tayfield from South Africa. Farooq Engineer was involved in a lot of those stories, as was Brian Close. So, you know, people normally ask me here about Geoffrey Boycott, and of course I know Geoffrey Boycott very well as well. When I worked for the BBC, I had to interview Geoffrey every time he scored 100, and he scored a few, you know, and he'll tell you that as well. But it's a great game. I love the cricket, and I'm hoping, while I'm here, to get to some cricket at Eden Gardens. I have been once before. I think I saw a match there involving railways, and I'm like, yeah. I've not seen a test match at Eden Gardens. I saw a test match in Delhi 2 years ago, the slowest day in the history of test cricket against South Africa, when Amla and de Villiers put on about 30 in about 58 overs, I think it was. But no, I love my cricket, so hopefully I'll get to Eden Gardens while I'm here.
Well, coming back to the commentary tips and all that. We often get to see the commentators. In fact, we also have to do commentaries in the studios, to be precise. which is we are not familiar with, because we are familiar. We love to do commentary in the stadiums, open stadiums, when we can have the entire view of the stadium. How difficult it is, and what would be your note of advice for those who do commentaries over there in the studio?
We call it off-tube commentary, and it is difficult because if you're at a game, you've got an overall picture. You can see things that are happening off the ball, you can gauge reaction from the crowd, how much they're enjoying a game. If you're there as well, you've got the local papers, you're talking to people. When you're just in a studio, you are dictated to by the picture. The only good thing is, from a viewer's perspective, you are talking about what they're looking at. You're not tempted to talk about other things as well. So I can understand why some companies want you to do off-tube commentary, but it is a different discipline. You again have to prepare an awful lot. But the one advantage is that you do get close-ups of the numbers of the players all the time, and really that should make identification easier in a funny way. Whereas if you're in the stadium and one team is wearing grey shirts, for example, and white numbers, which are very hard to decipher, that is more difficult. But of course we all want to be there. You want to be at the game, you want to savour the atmosphere, the flavour of the occasion. But if you're in the studio, you don't have that. Yes, hopefully the sound engineers, who are very good, will feed you the atmosphere, and you have that to feed off, but you are totally dictated to by the picture.
Well, John, another question. I think this is perhaps the last question which I have to ask you. John, you have seen the FIFA U17 World Cup this time around. According to you, you have seen football across the globe. You have commentated on football across the globe. How do you see India playing the first ever FIFA World Cup?
Well, I think India comes out of the World Cup with great credit. Let's say that to start with. I mean, the stadiums have been renovated. Here we are, we're sitting outside the Salt Lake Stadium. I won't give you the full name off the top of my head. That takes a bit of doing. It's been beautifully renovated. The tournament itself has been really well run, and all our people, and I'm not just saying this, the FIFA people here in the hotel are delighted with the organisation and with the way that India has taken on the job of running a World Cup. It's a massive operation, it really is. You know, matches being played all around the country in 6 different venues. It involves thousands of people. So congratulations first of all to the India Football Federation for the way they have taken the task on board and undertaken what's been a superb World Cup. So far as the football itself is concerned, I think yesterday we had the first goalless draw, Chile and Mexico. The average is something like 3.5 goals per game, and if it carries on in this vein, it's going to be the most prolific under-17 World Cup in history, and I think that's wonderful. The other thing that's been great is that stars have been born. Gouiri has scored a lot of goals for the French. Players have emerged from countries you didn't expect them to emerge from, like Iraq, whose goal scorer Mohamed Dawood has scored 3 times here and missed a penalty. England, and I am English, but I'm not going to be biased here, but they've got some superb players. Foden, for example, a left-sided player from Manchester City, has been absolutely terrific, and that's been encouraging from our point of view. India's goalkeeper has been excellent, he really has. And my only disappointment for India, and Jeekson has become a big name of course as well, is that I think they've learned a very harsh lesson in a footballing sense, and that is that you never ever let your concentration levels drop. It was totally understandable that in the minute Jeekson scored they went crazy. It was like they'd won the World Cup. But I was watching here in the hotel and I'm shouting at my screen, even at the coach, because he was celebrating on the touchline. I'm saying, concentrate, concentrate, because you knew that Colombia still had 2 minutes and could just go down the other end and score. And lo and behold, this is not being wise after the event. That's exactly what happened. So I think the biggest lesson that India have learned from this World Cup is you never ever let your concentration levels drop. But they've done well. They've played creditably. They didn't expect to win matches at all. They've done very well. But overall, my abiding memory will be of a splendid World Cup. You know, I love the Indian people. They are such genuine people. They love their football here. Not quite as much as their cricket maybe, but they're getting there. And I think India emerges from the Under-17 World Cup of 2017 with enormous credit.
Well, I don't get bored. I'm sure the viewers don't get bored when John Helm speaks all the time, because he is such an entertaining person. And that's all. I think it's being a phenomenal interaction, and it would help all the viewers who want to become a football commentator. hit the subscribe option and the bell icon to get all the exclusive sports videos on Extra Time.